Okay, so this video is on population distribution for the IB Geography course. The first exam is in 5 days' time on the 9th of May 2025. So this video is basically just me trying to refresh anyone's memory on population distribution if they need it, with of course 2 case studies for the exam as well on South Africa and China. Okay, so quick facts. 5% of the world's land supports 75% of the world's population. Now we can see this through looking at the map on the left. We can see that in Singapore over here, South Korea, Taiwan, India, southern UK, Netherlands, the population is very high, especially for that land area. 80% of people live in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, if you were to draw the equator on this map, it runs just under Singapore here, so it runs just through Somalia and across here, and so you can see that the majority of the population does live in the Northern Hemisphere, and the Southern Hemisphere has less densely populated countries, or countries with less people, such as Australia, New Zealand, the southern half of Africa, and the southern half of South America. Most people live within 1,000 kilometers of the sea. Now, this is quite a vital component. If you actually had a map of population density, like where people are located within a country, you would see that the majority of people are on the coast, or relatively close to the coast, because historically, and even now, access to water and access to water for trade and just as a natural resource is a very, very vital thing for human survival, and so people decided to put their settlements on the coast. And last but not least, 55% of people live in cities. Now, this is actually quite a alarming statistic. Well, not necessarily alarming, but it's quite a good statistic to look at, because it shows that nearly half of the world's population don't live in cities, which again just shines the light on the communities that we don't see as much represented in the news or in the media that don't live in cities. But yeah, 55% of people live in cities. Right, what are some physical factors affecting population distribution? So, climate and weather is a big one, because of course temperate climates with stable weather conditions are more attractive because they're less unpredictable. Areas with good sunlight, temperature and precipitation are good, because obviously when humans settle we want to grow stuff, so it's good for agriculture. And areas that are very dry, very cold or very wet will have sparse populations. Now India is an exception to this, because although it is subject to a seasonal monsoon climate, it is one of the most densely populated countries in the world. Relief and landform. So the shape and the elevation of land affects accessibility, soil quality, and natural hazards of an area. Of course, it's going to be hard for people to live in areas with mountains, because the climate is cold, dry, not very good for agriculture, not very flat. Yeah, so it's going to have a low population density. Now, soil type and quality. Volcanic areas can be very attractive. That's why I have this picture in the top right. This is someone holding volcanic soil. Now, when a volcano erupts, the volcanic ash actually contains a lot of natural minerals like phosphorus that makes the soil more fertile around a volcano. So actually, volcanic areas can actually be a lot more attractive for human settlement, but also the resources that you can get from volcanoes, such as sulfur, gold and diamonds, are also good, as that's what humans are interested in, as they are quite valuable. Vegetation-wise, grasslands are more attractive due to the development of settlements, and areas with dense forestry or lack of vegetation have very sparse populations. That's why you don't find many populations living in the desert, like in the sparse desert, and also that's why you don't find many people living in the Amazon rainforest, for example, because it is very dense. Natural resources is of course another factor, such as, you need resources such as fresh water, raw materials and minerals. The presence of fresh water, as I was talking about earlier, being near the coast, is very, very useful for water. It's not necessarily fresh, but it can always be filtered. Yeah, so areas with these natural resources are very attractive for human settlements. Now, some things to actually avoid, or what affect it negatively. Natural hazards. Obviously, you don't want to be living in somewhere where it's prone to have a lot of tsunamis or tornadoes or hurricanes or whatever, or volcanic activity or floods that can deter or displace human populations. Now, I would say one exception to this is probably somewhere like the Philippines. It is quite prone to natural disasters, Philippines and Japan maybe, but they have come up with some ways to overcome some of these issues with the natural hazards to make it easier to live there. Now, in terms of human factors, you obviously have economic development. Areas with a higher level of income, trade, and industrialization tend to attract more people. Past industrial regions such as Birmingham, Manchester, and Sheffield in the United Kingdom have continued higher densities of population, as of course people moved there when the regions were in their industrial phases, and now they've come out of them, or they are still slightly in them, and so people still live there. Political stability is very important, as areas with lower levels of conflict, violence, and corruption tend to be more peaceful. That's quite a simple one. Cultural diversity. Areas with more diverse and tolerant cultures tend to be more attractive and welcoming to people, and so people will want to live there. Social service. Areas with better access to education, healthcare, and social welfare tend to have higher qualities of life and lower mortality rates. Therefore, people want to live there. Of course, if an area has higher levels of healthcare, it will be easier for people to live there, as they'll have longer life expectancy. Environmental awareness. So areas with more awareness and action on environmental issues tend to have a lower levels of pollution, because they they actively look out and introduce policies to avoid it. They tend to have less resource depletion and natural disasters, which enhance population sustainability, as in they have less natural disasters. And of course, historically, migration of people, forced or voluntary, has led to the redistribution of populations, such as the Atlantic slave trade, which was a big forced migration of slaves from Africa over to America and up to Europe. So, of course, some people live in areas because they were forced to, but also migration of people voluntary. Some people may have wanted to move, like if wanted to move for work or wanted to move for other economic opportunities, for example. Now we're going on to our first case study here, which is China and their uneven population distribution. China has a land area of 9.7 million kilometers squared, and it's the second most populated country after India, with a population of 1.42 billion people. 27% of the land is desert, which is found up in the top right area over here, and 33% is mountainous regions, as you can see down here. This purpley white zone in the bottom left represents elevation above 4,000 or 5,000 meters, which means this is a very mountainous area. Likewise, this is all very flat in the eastern coast, and up here the majority of the land is desert. So this is mostly uninhabited. If you see this map at the top, this map runs from two towns or two cities called Heihe and Tenchong. Sorry for my pronunciation. 94% of the population live to the right of this line, and only 6% live to the left. So it runs along here. 94% of people live here. And if you look at the other map, if you compare them, you can actually see why it makes sense. This is very flat land close to this coast with very little elevation, whereas this is very high land with a lot of mountains, and this is mainly desert here on this northern part of China, and so most people tend to live in the east. The eastern provinces are therefore the richest as well. You have like Shanghai on the east, which is a very rich city, of course, because it's full of economic activities and development. In terms of internal migration, since 1978, over 160 million people have left rural China to seek work in the major cities, most of which are on the east. Wages in urban areas are 40% higher than in rural areas, and around 20 million people arrive in cities each year. Now, moving on to South Africa. Again, we're just flying through these just to refresh your memory, and also I have the stats up on the screen so you could write them down, or yeah, you could jot them down somewhere, or you could just watch this video to just refresh your memory on these case studies. Okay, so the Republic of South Africa is the southernmost country of the African continent. It has a land area of 1.22 million kilometers squared, so quite a bit smaller than China, with a population density of 50 per kilometer squared. It's the second most populous country south of the equator, after Tanzania, with 60.6 million people, and the 24th most populous country in the world. Approximately 69% of the population is urban, and most people live in the east. Now, interestingly, you see around some of the three biggest cities, which are the three capitals, if you will, of South Africa. We have very high population density up here around Pretoria and Johannesburg, and then you have Bloemfontein, which is down here, and again, it's quite densely populated just around Bloemfontein, but around it is completely sparse. You have the sparse landscapes over here with not many people at all, and then concentrated down into Cape Town over here, again close to the sea. You have high population density. Now, if you look up the sides of the coasts of the country, you can also see that the high population density runs along here, especially in places like Durban and Richards Bay and East London and Bishop, because it's of course close to the coast, good for trade and good for natural resources. And so naturally these cities and these provinces around the coast and in these locations tend to be the richest and therefore have the most people. Thank you for watching. Good luck for geography and good luck for the rest of your exams if you see this before them. If you see it afterwards, I don't know why you'd click on it afterwards, because you'd finished it already, but if you do, regardless, thanks for watching, and if you want to see more of this, please like the video and subscribe. Thanks.